Well, welcome everyone. I'm Ron Gerber at Angelbeat. Love doing these fireside chats with many innovative companies that you may not know of today, but you will surely know about in the future. Yanni is the CEO of Valence Security. Now, when you look at their website, it talks about securing the supply chain. When I first heard about Yanni, I thought, well, maybe this is like Colonial Pipeline, which was tragically hacked about 12 months ago and totally disrupted the supply chain of oil and gas flow along the East Coast. What Valence specialized in is in the digital supply chain, specifically around software as a service applications that are increasingly so important to organizations, but are a new threat vector. When Yanni and I were talking, setting up this call through Zoom, through Calendly, all these apps are integrated. Plus, you've got all the apps migrating from on-prem installations to increasingly being cloud-based. That's very efficient, but it creates new threat vectors. So Yanni, maybe with that background, you could just talk a little bit about your history, what led you to start up Valence, and what is the problem you're solving in this increasingly cloud-based world of software?
Sure. So I think that if you look at the vast majority of attacks over the past couple of years, a lot of them are focused on really on our digital supply chain, like you mentioned. So third-party vendors, external access, and eventually the network or the ecosystem of trust that we put into different third parties that now have increasingly more access to our core business applications and to basically to our core data and privileges. And as such, we're starting to see more and more attacks that are focusing on that trust factor and are targeting the third-party vendors because in a lot of cases, they're the weakest link in terms of our security posture. So if you look at the famous SolarWinds the attack campaign from early 2021, it was published early 2021, a lot of the techniques that the attackers use, whether if it's by hacking SolarWinds themselves or looking at different other third-party vendors and supply chain access that they could gain through these attack vectors, were highly focused on eventually the weakest link, which is in most cases supply chain access, and the fact that different organizations are trusted with higher privilege access to sensitive data and privileges. And this is just one of many cases that we've seen over the past couple of years that led Shlomi, my co-founder, and myself to really explore and look into the space and eventually to start Valence mid-2021, focusing on how we can help organizations secure their SaaS supply chain or SaaS to SaaS third-party integrations, and basically helping organizations improve the security of their core SaaS applications like Microsoft 365, Google Workspace, Salesforce, Slack, and others from attacks that are focused on API-based integrations, third-party apps, third-party integrations, and the no-code, low-code workflow automation that allows to basically create different data flows in and out of core business applications.
So that makes a lot of sense. I'm sure so many organizations, and you referenced all the world's biggest companies, Microsoft, Google, AWS, are spending billions on securing their infrastructure. Internal IT groups are also very focused when they're migrating to the cloud and securing their direct connection to the AWS, GCP, or Azure's. The problem it seems like you're addressing is once you're starting to use the big three, it's a ripple effect. Now you want to integrate all these other cloud applications. On a related note, we hear a lot of activity around eliminating data silos, and data analytics is a huge deal. Previously, data was all compartmentalized. Now, as you mentioned, it's all interdependent, intertwined, and that really goes beyond what you can really rely upon either your own internal team or AWS to secure, because they don't know all the applications you're using. They know they set up interfaces, they set up APIs, but it's only going to be a bigger problem. And I would imagine the value of Valence is you probably get a little bit of the Google network effect, because you see all the applications like Calendly and others that people are increasingly using. You figure out a way to secure it on your Microsoft 365 or Salesforce platform. And then what you can probably do, and you can comment on this, is organizations don't need to reinvent the wheel. They can go, okay, I need to make my employees more powerful. You mentioned the importance of Valence being able to empower your employees to let them do more without having a lot of security constraints that slow down developers. And I could just see as this explosion in software as a service integration occurs, Valence is going to be riding that wave to secure all these apps.
Yeah, if you think eventually on the shared responsibility model, large SaaS applications like Microsoft 365, Google Workspace, Salesforce, and others are focused on securing their platform and how you manage and utilize their platform. But eventually, customers and their users can eventually decide on whatever configuration they want for their tenant and to connect to their Salesforce tenant, whatever other third-party vendors they want. But that's the customer responsibility. It's no longer the big vendor's responsibility. And then if you look at an attack like the GitHub OAuth attack campaign that occurred earlier this year, what the attackers were able to do is they hacked two very legitimate third-party vendors like Travis CI and Heroku. They stole their access tokens, and using those access tokens, they were able to steal data from GitHub repositories. So even though GitHub itself as a platform is still secure, it's very secure, and it's not something that was breached directly, and the GitHub customers were not breached, the GitHub customers' data on GitHub was stolen because a third-party vendor was breached. So the shared responsibility model eventually turns the responsibility towards the customers to whatever they consent to. And then when you couple that with the democratization of IT and the fact that today the management and the administration of a lot of the core SaaS applications is not precisely something that goes through a central IT organization, but is managed by the business units and the end users. And maybe the Workday administrator is not part of the IT, and the Salesforce administrator is not part of IT, and therefore they can perform a lot of these configurations on their own. Therefore, they also create more exposure to these applications by creating different types of consents on onboarding third-party vendors that didn't precisely go through the proper governance, risk, and compliance procedures and third-party risk management. And eventually, they own the risk and the responsibility over the risk, but they don't always have a good understanding of the consequences from a security standpoint of the different configurations that they create within these platforms.
Interesting. Do you have any particular industries where you're having more success? It seems like just about every industry will use it, but I'm curious as to where have been some of your initial successes. And if I am an IT security executive of a firm, how do you address their concern, which is, well, our existing compliance tools will cover this. Why do I really need Valence, yet another tool to worry about managing? How do you deal with some of those questions?
Sure. So our sweet spot is, of course, with the more SaaS native or companies that were born and raised in the cloud and have all their infrastructure in SaaS and don't have a lot of legacy infrastructure. But surprisingly enough, we're finding also a lot of financial institutions and big companies and large corporations that have that already gone through the digitalization and the cloud migration processes that increase their exposure to these eventually cloud-based systems. So definitely the sweet spot is more cloud native or hyper growth tech companies, but we're also seeing a lot of traction and a lot of interest from different industries, like really the financial institutions and different types of basically organizations that already went through the digitalization and went through the process of migrating to SaaS applications. And eventually organizations that are in the mindset that they want to encourage innovation and to empower their end users to make the right decision usually come to Valence in order to leverage our platform to not only educate and explain and empower their end users to make the right and secure decisions, but also to continuously enforce the right guardrails that don't precisely block innovation, but enable it to run fast and to fix whatever mistakes that are made along the way without having to slow down or to stop the business units that want to eventually perform the best activity for the company.
I bet that's really the sweet spot. Whenever you hear about a new security innovation, people say, I get that. Everyone is very developer centric or developer focused. So you've got to strike that balance between enabling developers to be innovative and still meeting your security, compliance, regulatory guidelines. And it seems like you found a way to really hit the sweet spot there.
Right. And it's not only the developers, it's also marketing and sales and finance and HR and all, basically an entire organization is relevant for being able to run fast and not to slow them down.
So what's next for Valence? How do you go about getting people to increasingly use your product or their trial programs? How would that work? Someone's listening to this, they go, okay, I get this. I just started using this calendar app. Our CEO wants us to get rid of every data center to be more sustainable and save energy. They can see these new threat vectors emerging. What are the next steps that someone's watching this video should do? Do they go to valencesecurity.com? Are there some APIs? Are there some trials? What's next for them?
Sure. So the best next step is to go to the valencesecurity.com, and really we have a very easy process of doing a free risk assessment where we help to the customer to learn more about the problem space and to better understand how and when should they address the problems that we're able to support with, which is the main focus or the main, I would say, immediate next step. To just go there, you can sign up. It literally takes up to 2 hours, and you get a very good analysis of the risk surface. There are recommended remediation steps and an analysis from a security expert that will help you eventually understand how you should prioritize this and how you should address it in terms of the scale of the problem and the specific use cases of, for example, maybe somebody went through a POC process, they tested 4 different platforms, they chose one, but they never disconnected the other 3 vendors. They all have still live access where they're processing data from your organization. All these types of activities are stuff we can help with in terms of having a very quick, rapid assessment of the risk, and then you can take it from there and start leveraging. Assuming you go into a full-blown deployment, you can start leveraging our automated risk reduction capabilities, because we're focused a lot on the remediation aspect and not just being a company that shows security professionals their problems, but also solves the problems and help them address them at scale with the proper remediation steps.
So the good thing is, I'm a CSO saying I got a little bit of time. Let me spend an hour or so, not that big a deal. Right. And then through the work that you've done behind the scenes, I'll be able to get a report and show everything that's a risk and prioritize those risks, which allows me then to more quickly justify an investment in the full-blown Valence product. I've seen similar approaches from companies who say, we can identify malware. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And they go to CSOs and they say, okay, I know you think you've gotten every breach solved, but why don't you put in my system for a week or two? And if I find some breaches, great, then you'll use it. If not, then you don't need me. And I think that's probably a very effective tool, because you'll go in there, it won't be disruptive. You probably have some agents that can automatically evaluate an IT infrastructure. You'll need a little bit of input. And then, if nothing else, you've prevented the CFO from having to approve a big outside security firm doing the same kind of SaaS audit that, in effect, you've just done.
Right. And also, eventually, what we also show the CISOs that we work with is the ability to take action using our platform without having to add headcount. So really using automated processes that engage and collaborate with the end users, and that help you scale the remediation process of showing effective risk reduction over time and showing effective progress with the most important KPIs for security teams, which is eventually showing risk reduction and showing we were here with the risk, and now we are able to effectively decrease it over time and to improve our posture.
I think that's a key thing. We hear all the time that it's so difficult to hire talented individuals. And I hear that most amongst not just developers, but security professionals. And the value of dealing with Valence, the existing IT staff can then become more strategic architects. You're not really trying to struggle and hiring someone. I mean, it's tough trying to compete with startups. It's tough trying to compete with AWS, Microsoft, and Google, who are all trying to hire the same talented individuals. But the good thing with Valence, you've got your team already in place. And I, as a CISO, as an IT director, IT security analyst, whatever your title is, I can leverage your team. I can be more strategically thinking and trying to understand the reports you generated and what to do, as opposed to getting more involved in a lot of mundane tactical tasks that you can automate with still the appropriate amount of human intervention.
Even more than that, we can help solve and remediate really 95% of the problems, and then all team needs to do is basically review the 5% that requires human intervention, and the rest just goes away using automation and using technology. Not automation completely, but automated processes that collaborate with the business owners and the entity group that have the business context and that can help either provide justification or perform the proper remediation steps in order to reduce the risk. So that combination really reduces the overhead but shows effective risk reduction, even if your team doesn't do anything. We have some customers that have very busy schedules, or maybe they're under a breach or an attack, but the platform continues to provide them value and show them metrics, progress in their metrics. And in some cases, they don't always have to even log into the platform. All they have to do is set a policy, say, this is the guardrail. I have the central visibility and enforcement, and now I can start running with it.
What a great, powerful platform. I can just imagine the investors behind Valence saying, okay, cloud is really accelerating. They've done all the easy cloud migrations like G Suite or Microsoft 365. Now people are moving their mission critical apps to the cloud. And at the same time, there's all these cloud-based integrations that are all being done outside a controlled environment. That's all exposing new threat vectors. That's why you need to check out Valence Security. We'll look forward to having Yanni present at some future events. And if people want follow-up, again, go to Valence Security. You can go to angelbeat.com, #Angelbeat, whatever it is, we'll put you in touch. Whereas like featuring smaller innovative firm, Valence was formed in Israel, though it has a very substantial US presence. And we look forward to seeing them grow and be more involved in Angelbeat. Anything else, Yanni?
No, I think we covered mostly it.
That's great. Well, I appreciate this. Glad you're helping keep the world safe, and I'll look forward to meeting you in person in the near future.
Perfect. Thank you very much.